Okay, here we go. So, welcome, Christine. Welcome to the Empaths Journey to Empowerment podcast. I'm Susan Wigley, and I'm the host and certified holistic empowerment coach and intuitive. And this is the inaugural episode with my special guest, Christine Szinner. The Empaths Journey to Empowerment is a podcast dedicated to helping empaths and sensitive people awaken their gifts and find clarity and empowerment in their lives and create abundance and fulfillment using their intuitive abilities. This podcast provides inspiring stories, practical tips, and transformational insights on topics such as setting healthy boundaries, cultivating abundance, and navigating relationships and career paths as an empath. As an empath, it's important to step into your power and own your unique gifts and abilities. However, this can be challenging in a world that often values logic and reason over intuition and sensitivity. That's where the Empath's Journey to Empowerment comes in. By tuning into the podcast, you'll gain the tools, guidance, and support you need to confidently navigate your empathic journey, cultivate resilience and empowerment in all areas of your life, and connect with a community of like-minded people. Ultimately, stepping into your power as an empath means embracing your intuitive gifts, setting healthy boundaries, and creating a life that aligns with your values and beliefs. It means trusting yourself and your inner guidance while also seeking out the support and resources you need to thrive. The Empath's Journey to Empowerment is here to help you do just that by providing the inspiration and insights and community to help you truly step into your power and create the life you desire. Today, we're going to embark on an inspiring journey with Christine Szinner, an empowered empath who turned into a health, vitality, and lifestyle coach after celebrating her triumph over emotional eating and transforming her entire life in just 3 months. So without further ado, here is Christine Szinner. Welcome, Christine, to the Empath's Journey to Empowerment podcast.
Oh, thank you, Susan. What a lovely introduction. I'm really pleased that you chose me to be here on your first episode.
Yes, I'm so excited that we were able to do this together for the first episode too. This is super exciting. So can you share your story of discovering your empathic abilities and what it was like for you to step into your power as an empath?
Yeah, absolutely. So I didn't know I was an empath for a very long time, almost all my life. So we're talking about 30 years. And something I noticed along the way is that people were constantly saying to me that I was overly sensitive, and I would always feel like I could anticipate how people were feeling. If I said a certain thing to them, I would know how that would resonate with them, and I would understand before I even said something how something would go. And that was sometimes a burden, right? Because you wouldn't speak up for yourself. You wouldn't go and do certain things because you thought it would hurt somebody. So I felt very limited as a young child, as a teenager, and so forth. And also I had very low self-esteem in general, because when I was 5 years old, I had a really terrible run-in with a family member who commented on my eating behavior. And that sort of sparked a negative body image in me, which came on top of this whole sort of discovery journey with my empathic ability. So I didn't know I was an empath. I had a very negative body image to start out with when I was 5. It became a self-fulfilling prophecy. I became an overweight teenager. My self-esteem was even lower in those years, and it's terrible, really, when you are feeling so uncomfortable in your own skin, and the people around you, the environment around you seems to constantly suggest that there's something wrong, something I'm doing wrong, something I'm saying wrong, something I'm behaving wrong. And I just felt my whole life that I was doing everything wrong. And so that led me to question myself a lot and have that self-doubt, thinking, is it me? Is it them? It can't be all of them. Maybe it is me. And it led to that negative self-talk that then led me to have other issues in my life. So it was a real vicious circle, my situation that I started out with, and my journey to discovering that I'm empathic and what that means and why that's a powerful thing to do or to have in your life, wasn't something I understood until very recently. So we're talking about 3 years ago, maybe, I started to awaken to the fact that actually this whole empathic ability could be a good thing.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people resonate with that because, yeah, I sure do. And then that conditioning between the ages of 0 and 7 really carries through our entire life, because that conditioning sets the tone for our life until we discover that it's just a story and it isn't necessarily the truth. And I can certainly relate to you awakening your empathic abilities and being aware that you have these empathic abilities, because I was 55 when I discovered that there was a term for it. I didn't know, and I also didn't know that I could turn that off, and I had control over how much energy I let in, because I didn't have any boundaries either. And that's a pretty life-changing thing when you awaken to that realization, and you learn that you can actually turn that off, and then you can tune in when you want. Very powerful. So how has this changed your life since you fully embraced your empathic gifts and started to use them to create the life you desire?
Yeah, so I'll start by telling you a bit about what my life used to be like, and especially around, the time when I had my health transformation, because my health transformation went hand in hand with my awakening to being an empath and then becoming a coach. And none of that would have happened if it weren't for those three things coinciding. So I had, as I said, as a young child, internalized an identity around being fat, ugly, and unlovable. And it came from something a family member said as a throwaway comment about, me eating a lot of food or me loving my food, and how that would make me fat, ugly, and unlovable. And I don't know how much they realized at the time, how much that would affect me, but it's something I thought about constantly. And I remember that was the time when I started comparing myself. So I started thinking about myself in relation to other girls. I would compare my thighs to the circumference of the thighs of other girls in the gym and stuff like that when I was a young child in school. And it went on and snowballed from there. So by the time I was a teenager, that comparing was well ingrained, and I'd become an emotional comfort eater, and food was sort of my lifeline, if you will, right? So I had a very lonely time growing up. My parents weren't always available. My parents were working, and I was raised by my grandmother. And when I was 12, she had a stroke. Which I never publicly talked about until today. But I think it's important to understand my journey with the empathic side of things, because that really, to me, felt like I'd lost my mother, right? That was a very hard blow. And I was having to take on a caretaker role at that moment in my life. So I was young. I knew how to cook because my grandmother had taught me. And I was taking on lots of responsibilities in the household, which meant I didn't have time for friends. I didn't have time to do lots of things that other children and teenagers my age would do. And so I became very isolated. And I do feel like that set me even more back in my journey to awakening any kind of power I had in me, or becoming empowered in any way, because I just felt by default completely disempowered. I felt like I was worthless, like I was nothing. And my environment reinforced that, right? I'm oversensitive. I don't understand things properly. I'm not really in the world. And people were telling me about how the world worked, but I had no way of accessing any information other than what I was being told secondhand. And things weren't quite matching up. So I was hearing things in school and they wouldn't match what I heard at home. And I didn't know what was true. And it threw me into a lot of turmoil. So food was a constant, and especially things like bread, cheese, those kind of foods, they were soothing to me, and chocolate. Right? Because chocolate is trifecta of sugar, caffeine, and fat, and it's very stimulating to the brain. So I didn't know any of that at the time. I just knew if I'm sad, I can eat chocolate, I feel better. If I'm lonely, pizza keeps me company. If I have a down day, cheese will be there for me. It was that kind of a thing. But the quantities and the frequency of the occasions when I would eat emotionally were becoming quite extreme. So I was starting to fall into certain binge eating behaviors very gradually. And I gained a lot of weight, which was very noticeable. And that made me want to turn to food even more. So I was completely trapped, and it went on until I was about 17, which is when I went on a language exchange to the UK. So I'm from Germany originally, and I went on a 3 months language exchange from which I never returned home.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so the story goes, and that sounds very dramatic, but it was with my parents' permission, because obviously I wasn't only 17, I wasn't an adult yet, and I didn't have any money. So it was very much something that I had to convince my parents was a good idea. But I had made up my mind that I wanted to go to university in the UK, and obviously staying in the UK, doing A-levels over here, which is the qualification people gain before they go to university, would have made it easier than to go at a British university application with foreign, papers. So it was easier that way. We were still in the EU at the time, so it made perfect sense. And my parents ended up agreeing to this. And so I was able to stay in the UK. I went back to Germany for a gap year in the end, which then eliminated me from having any student finance from the UK government, which was very, very hard. So there's more hardship ahead. So my story is one of constant hardship and constant environmental influences that are beyond my control. And I felt like a victim my whole life. And that's the reason why I ended up where I ended up. So fast forward to, I'm in my 30s. I met my husband in my mid-20s. We got married. It was a very difficult relationship. And by the time we were in our early 30s, I was in a really stable, great career, well-paid career, but I was desperately unhappy and stressed, and I felt like an outcast. I didn't feel like I belonged into the organization. And I'd left the place that I loved to work at for my husband, because he couldn't stay in that environment because it was too small a town. He didn't have any friends there. And we felt it was better if I moved, because I had an easier time transferring my career to another organization. But the new organization didn't suit me, even less than previous jobs, because as we said before, Susan, when we spoke offline, rules and jobs and confinement don't bode well with empathic individuals, because they're too restrictive, and I always felt that. And so alongside all of these changes, right, I have this history with overweight and dieting, which was the way I always thought I would solve my problem. So I very much was focused on the reason I feel so bad about myself is because my body is in a certain shape or not in a certain shape. And if my body can change, then everything else can change. And now I know it's the wrong way around, right? But I didn't know that back then. I thought the way to get better is to change the external. And so I got into my early 30s. I was married to a lovely guy. We just weren't right for each other. And I was desperately unhappy, isolated. He was never there. Then the pandemic hit on top of everything else. So COVID-19 came along. Suddenly I'm working from home. I'm physically as well as emotionally isolated. And so it got to about late 2020 and I had major burnout. So I was working so much overtime. There was a big project that I was working on, and my husband was never there. I went weeks without seeing a single person face to face, which is not good for well-being in any case. And then it got to the point where I logged off work one day, and I felt like I was dizzy. I couldn't walk properly. My left side, my arm and my leg on the left side went numb. I had numbness in my face, just here under my eye. And I didn't know what was going to happen to me, right? I was home alone because my husband was already at work, and I had to ring the emergency services and say, I'm feeling this way. I don't know why, and I've unlocked the front door in case I pass out. I don't know what's going to happen. And they took me to hospital with suspected stroke.
Oh, how frightening.
And that was in late 2020, in the middle of the pandemic, when you don't want to be going to hospital, right, as well. And I didn't know if I was coming back, if I'm honest. They couldn't send me an ambulance because it would have taken too long to send me a taxi, because they said you cannot afford to wait for an ambulance. You have to get there now. So they sent me a taxi, and the driver knew that he should check in on me, that the door was open. He came, he checked, he took me to hospital. I got fast tracked through, which is how serious people thought it was my situation. And then they found that there was no stroke. And in fact, my body was physically totally fine, apart from being overweight, right? And I also have arthritic pain, or used to have arthritic pain in my hands. So apart from those things, I was generally considered in good health. My heart was fine, blood and urine samples were fine, and the doctors were a little bit dumbfounded as to what had caused these issues, and they started to interview me about my lifestyle, my job, my home situation, and they concluded that it had to be stress, and an extreme form of stress. And I think being an empath and not knowing about it and not knowing how to protect myself from these outer influences, I got completely bulldozed, right? I had no chance at all. It was work pressure, home pressure, my relationship falling apart, COVID-19. My relationship with my parents is very strained in general. It's getting better, but at the time in COVID lockdown, we were not talking, so I had no one to speak to there. My friends all had moved away. So my best friend moved to Vienna, which is, in Austria. And it was difficult to be there on my own, being an island. Then I had this health scare. And I thought, I don't know what to do now, right? Because it was like a total wake-up call to say something has to happen. And of course, the doctors had to say, you need to drop the weight, you need to think about healthier lifestyles. And I was living off takeaway at the time. I hadn't cooked for myself in years at this point. Everything that was eaten that was home cooked was cooked by my husband, who is not knowledgeable about healthy food. So everything was kind of like fried and sugared and those kind of things. And it really did take a toll. So about 5 years, I didn't eat anything fresh, very few vegetables, very few home cooked meals, mostly takeaways. And I was really dependent on that takeaway being there. I sometimes talk about online of how I used to order a pizza, specific pizza order, family-sized pizza with cheesy crust, with certain toppings. And it had to be, I would order it at 4:30 so I could get there in the half an hour till I finish work at 5 p.m. And it had to be there at 5. And if it was late or something was missing, my day was ruined. And especially on a Friday night, I would do that. And on a Friday night, if anything went wrong, the weekend was ruined, right? And it was almost like my whole sort of emotional inner life, with all of those influences taking on all the stresses, it distorted my view of reality in a way. And I was in a way, I was crazy, right? I wasn't acting like a rational human being anymore. I just needed my comfort, and all I could do was work and then comfort eat and then recover from the impact that food would have on me, because I'm also gluten and dairy intolerant. And I've known this for a long time, but I wasn't able to look after myself. Right.
Yeah. So that explains the inflammation and all that other stuff going on too.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh.
So I was at that breaking point, right, when I thought, okay, something has to happen. So I started to look into stress management, because that was the thing that I thought I can do something about immediately. Because with the overweight, I understood it needed to change, and I couldn't keep eating takeaways, but I wasn't emotionally in a position to stop that.
Right.
Nothing else would give me the comfort. I had no coping mechanisms since childhood. Food was the only thing. And then as I got older and busier and had more money, it would be more and more takeaway service and more paying other people to do something for me, and less doing off my own. And also with my overweight, I was too heavy for my bone frame, so I couldn't do certain things. So standing up for more than 10 minutes was hard. I would get a backache. And walking for more than sort of 15 minutes was hard, because I would start to chafe. Right. So it was very embarrassing. So even if I wanted to go out and walk, I couldn't have achieved a decent amount of movement and exercise to change anything. And even if I wanted to stand and cook and prep food, I couldn't physically have done it. So I needed something to come in the physical as well as the mindset side, but the stress management seemed manageable. And so I focused on that. So I started meditating again, which I was doing at university, but then I stopped when I was in my mid-20s. So I started that up again, took my meditation practice up again, which benefited me a great deal. And then I looked at the difference between the physical signals you give your body about stress and the mindset side. And so with the meditation, that was great. But I also needed to be conscious of when my body would not recognize that the stress was over. So I could be in a stressful situation, leave the stressful situation, but I would still be buzzing with stress. That cortisol was still coursing through me. The adrenaline was still coursing through me. So I would lie in bed at night and shake and not be able to sleep. So I had insomnia. And there came a point where I hadn't slept in like 3-4 nights. And I did feel like I didn't know what was real. I couldn't concentrate on anything. I took off work with stress. sick leave with stress. And I didn't know I was going to lose my career. I didn't know what was going to happen with my marriage. I wanted to leave. I wanted things to end, but I couldn't say it because I was too worried. I knew how much my husband would be hurt if I said I wanted him to leave. And I'm a Christian, so I believe marriage is forever. And here, suddenly I was thinking, I cannot do it anymore. I can't go through this anymore, but I could have never changed anything. And I prayed for change, and I meditated, and I tried to manage my stress, and it was making things more manageable, but I hit a wall where I thought something else needs to give too, right? So my awakening as an empath goes right along that sort of stress management journey, because the more I read about stress, the more I came across sort of articles around being empathetic, and what that meant, energy healing that people did, and how empaths were particularly good at this. And I would come up against it over and over, and then I came across you eventually. And it made a lot more sense once we started talking, Susan, because you have a way of putting things together that really do drive home the point. And they really sort of were a light bulb moment for me, being in your group, thinking about the way that you present empathic abilities and thinking, oh yeah, they're actual abilities. It's not just like a random feeling or a random, thing that I have going on. I thought, oh, I could use this. But in the first instance, just knowing I had it and just knowing, oh, this is a thing that's part of me. Right.
Yeah.
That was big, because with the meditation and stuff, I could always tune into things when I clear my mind. I can really perceive a lot from my environment. I can really figure a lot of stuff out. And I always say that I know how someone feels before they do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I've always been that way,
I'm
and people think you're crazy if you say anything like that, but it's true. We feel it.
Yeah.
We feel it because that's that clairsentience that is an ability we have. We were born that way. We've always had that ability. And it makes all the difference when you realize that's what it is. And it's not a curse, it's a gift.
Yeah.
And
that took me a while.
Yeah, for me, it took me forever to figure out that not everybody feels that. I just assumed everybody could see and feel and hear like I do. Well, that's not true.
Yeah.
We can see and sense and feel what's beneath the surface of what's going on in people's lives where they can't sense that.
Yeah. And that's
so
why
we
I used to
sense what's unsaid.
Yeah, and I used to get so frustrated with that because I didn't understand that there were these differences in other people. I thought, why can't they understand how much this affects me or how much this hurts me? If somebody goes home early to pick up the kids from school, they dump something on my desk for me to do because I haven't got children. That was very hurtful for me because it felt like they thought I had no life, and I didn't really have a life. But for them to assume that I didn't have anything planned and I could stay late or whatever all the time, that was painful to me with some colleagues, for example, at certain times. And I could never understand why they couldn't understand how much that would hurt me.
Right. They were taking you for granted too. And that just, it's really painful.
Yeah, and I was a pushover, right? I couldn't say no. That was the other side, because I knew how they would feel under pressure, stressed, right? If I said to them, oh, you can't get your kids because I'm not doing this for you. Like, okay, I knew that would really be painful for them. So I wanted to help, but I kept realizing that I was doing it over and over in a way where I was taking on the stress. In order not to stress them, I was taking it on myself, and I couldn't cope with that, right? So I was totally overloaded. And so, so my journey continued with that because I was still looking for answers, but I knew I couldn't diet. I knew it couldn't be a diet with my overweight and stuff. I became better at understanding the other people around me and how they were different and how I had different abilities that were making me perceive things in such an extreme and quite intense way. But I didn't know how to stop all of that, and I didn't know how to change anything else about my situation. So I was looking, and I decided then that I should go plant-based. That was my decision. I thought, okay, I'm going to try plant-based and see if that helps me shed some pounds. But of course, the bad habits weren't solved with plant-based, right? I was just eating the plant-based sugars and the plant-based trans fats and the plant-based, highly processed foods. And and I felt really frustrated then because I put on more weight. when I did that. And I was then becoming anxious about ruining my health, having a stroke for real. Those kind of things crossed my mind. And one day I was at work and it was a busy day, and this email popped up because we have an annual health and wellness week at work, and I never go. Haven't been for years because, what's the point?
Yeah.
And I saw an email come up, and it was an event run by a colleague who had recently become a coach. And she was now coaching people in a natural way of eating. And the words in the subject line were live longer, live happy, live free.
Oh, nice.
Lovely. And I thought, well, I saw it. It popped up in my inbox and I thought, that's nice. I'd like that. But I took no action. Because why would I? Like, those things seem unattainable to me. Why would I try?
Sure.
And then the next day, the email came up again. Same email, live longer, live happy, live free. And then I saw it 3 more times before the Friday. And it was on the next week. It's for the next week. And I thought, okay, it's online. It's on Zoom. I can go to it. I can probably do emails in the background whilst they're talking. Yeah, I'm going to try it. Okay, so I went to this event. There's only like 7 other people there. And I did do some emails in the background whilst this person was talking. And yeah, it was a nice presentation. And they were talking about how this is not a diet. It sticks to you. It's easy to do. It's all natural. And I was like, well, this is very nice. And then they mentioned the name of the program, and I looked it up and it looked expensive. And I was like, yeah, right. I'm not going to do that. But it kept consuming me, the idea that was planted in me, right? Because I could pick up from the vibrations in the room that this was a true story. This is not some scam or some marketing story. This was her true story. There were lots of similarities with me, how she'd been, overweight for all her life and always looking for a solution and never been able to diet. And I thought, okay, well, maybe this is the solution, because I can't just be doing the mindset work and meditating. I do have to do something. And she was running a class coming up quite soon after that presentation. She was offering spaces and I couldn't sign up, because what if my colleagues signed up too? What if someone else signed up who knew me, right? Because this is someone who worked in the same organization. So why wouldn't she get lots of people from around the institution? And why wouldn't they be people I knew? So
that fear is,
that's real. That was powerful. Yeah. So I always say that my health transformation and generally my awakening as an empath nearly didn't happen, because I nearly never did it. Okay, so I was not yet conscious at all. I wouldn't think of myself as an empath at this point. I was just starting to understand a lot more about the fact that I could feel things that other people couldn't feel. And I could tune into certain things that other people couldn't tune into. Yeah. And that was pretty much all I knew about myself at that moment. And so I waited longer. So she started her class and I kept Googling this program and thinking about it and Googling things and finding more and more stories for people who'd done it, who'd had great success. And really, it wasn't a diet, and really it was all natural. There were always great coaches to choose from. And then I saw that Mind Valley did the program as a corporate large class with, international people from all over the world, with hundreds of people in the room. And I thought, maybe that's the way to do it, without having to be visible. I thought I could hide in the crowd, I could still benefit. And I looked for a way of doing it free for a long time. About 6 weeks, I tried to find the meal plan or the gimmick or the shakes that they were going to be drinking. And then I realized that there was nothing anywhere. And I thought, that can't be. Like, why wouldn't there be somebody who's shared it? And the reason that I couldn't find it is because it doesn't exist, because there aren't any of those things, which is why I think it worked for me. So there aren't really any rules. They're just principles, and they're sound principles. And then you can start to create your own lifestyle based on these principles. And that's what ended up happening to me. So I went into the large corporate class, and I, for the first 2 weeks, didn't even participate. This is a theme in my life. I go all in, then I go, too scary, I can't do it after all.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, another empathic thing. Yeah, I think it's an empathic thing. We can have courage in the moment, and then at the last minute we have like that bias regret, and we go,
it's instant overwhelm.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started the program, I was very gentle. I watched the videos that they were making available, but I wasn't following along.
Mhm.
And I wasn't going to my coaching calls because my coach was in New Zealand and the times were difficult for me being in the UK. So I just sort of had 2 weeks of just sort of eating my usual takeaway food and watching those videos and learning about, how to be healthy. And then week 3 came along and I thought, okay, I have to have a talk with myself because I'd paid for the program up front. And I thought, okay, I paid all the money. If I don't participate, I can't even ask for a refund. So I have to do it. And I thought, okay, if I do it and it doesn't work, at least I get the money back. But if I do it and it works, at least I have this massive problem solved. And I was still doing it like a diet at that time. So I still thought, oh, this is the rules. I follow them along. So I started following along with the program and I had great success. Like by week 6, I had dropped I think it was about 9 kilos. So that's about
Wow.
nearly 20 pounds. And that was a lot for me. I'd never seen anything like that because in my mid-20s, I tried with willpower and calorie counting and exercise.
That doesn't work.
It doesn't work. And I had some results, but they were difficult to attain. I was constantly exhausted. I was very restricted. I was very unhappy, very isolated. And I got to the point where I was moving house and I ordered a pizza because I was exhausted from moving house. And once I had that pizza, I could never go back on the diet, on that regime. It was not sustainable for me. And this, I hoped, would be sustainable. So when I was doing this program, I really wanted it to work for me. And now that I'd seen success on the scale, which is where I could never see success, and more than I'd seen in 2 years on the other regime before, right? Because for 2 years, I was really on it in my mid-20s. I was like, this is going to happen. I'm going to do it. And I did it for 2 years and I had some results, but I only lost about 10 kilograms, so about 22 pounds in 2 years. And now I've done it in 6 weeks. Well,
that's amazing.
4 weeks really, because I hadn't done the first 2 weeks, hadn't done anything in the first 2 weeks. So 4 weeks, and the pain in my hands was going as well. So my inflammation was clearing up and I woke up one day, I had no pain. And I thought, oh, that's crazy.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah. That's how it felt to me, right? Because with transformation, you don't notice all the steps. And then one day you wake up and you've leaped.
Yes, that's very true.
Yeah,
and that's
so
a big transformation.
So I learned that it's about consistency, not intensity. Like health is all about that. And then that also, I think, is true for using empathic abilities, because it's about tuning in every so often, taking on things consistently, not going all in, absorbing everything on day one, right? Because also I've been isolated for so long that actually I wasn't having much opportunity anymore to tune into things, Work meetings were on Zoom. I'd go and not put my video on. People hadn't seen me in ages. Like in 2 years, no one had seen me because I was never going on video anymore. And one day I logged on the call. I think it was about maybe week 9 out of 13 weeks, 90-day program. And I tuned into one of the calls, which was at an okay time for me with the coach. And the second I came on the video, she exclaimed, "Oh my God, Christine looks like a different person." Right.
Amazing.
And I couldn't believe that. I couldn't see it. I couldn't see it, but I dropped a lot of weight by this point. And so by the end of my 90-day transformation journey, I had dropped 36.8 pounds.
That is incredible.
No exercise. Okay. All the conventional methods we didn't use. And I realized, it's because I'm getting healthier. And then with the healthy stuff came the clarity of mind.
Sure. And you released a lot of stress.
Yes.
And that stress shuts your metabolism down. And so, and as an empathic person, we tend to want that buffer because of all the energy that's coming at us. And if we don't have boundaries, it's a lot worse. So we want that buffer so that we don't feel it as much. So that's an enormous transformation in a short time.
Yeah, absolutely. And
truly
I was shocked.
Amazing.
I shocked myself. I never thought this could happen for me, with all my history of all the failed diets. And I realized I never failed a diet. The diets all failed me. which is one of the principles that we use in the program, right? It's one of the
Yeah.
things we teach you, why the
Yeah.
diets never worked and why this is different and how you do this differently. It instills confidence, which diets never do. Diets thrive.
No.
You have no confidence. They want you low. So you go and buy the next book, the next program, the next
Right.
gimmick. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a
So it was
perpetual
incredible.
cycle.
Yeah, it was incredible.
Yeah.
And with my emotional eating, that was the big worry, that something could happen and I could lose all my progress. So I was still anxious in a way, but generally my anxiety, my insomnia had resolved. I was sleeping really well now. I was feeling well. I had no more pain. I'd released lots of weight, so it was easier to walk, to move, to do things. And then I felt like I wanted to. So it was
Sure.
natural, right? But I made the point of never doing an exercise regime. So I'm not exercising, I'm moving intentionally when I feel like doing it.
Yes, and that makes a huge difference. A
Yeah.
huge difference. Because first of all, your vibration is higher and you enjoy it. It's really important to enjoy it because it's not like a torture to exercise. You're getting movement. As long as you're getting movement, it makes a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that emotional eating thing was hanging over me like a cloud because I took time off work. I had lots of annual leave stacked up and overtime. So I took lots of that to make time to do the program properly in the later weeks because I really saw it working. So I would dedicate a lot of time to it because I really wanted to make this happen. I felt like it was my last chance. This is working. Nothing else has ever worked. If I don't do this properly and dedicate myself to it, I'll regret it. So I was really on it with this program and it felt easy and effortless and enjoyable. And I was part of this big community and I'm still in touch with people from this group, by the way. And I've coached some of them as well.
Sure. Yeah.
It was great. Yeah, so it was that community support, the coaching was great. And then I came to the end of my 90 days. And with that clarity of mind, I tuned into my empathic ability pretty well by this point. So we're talking October 2021. And I had this great sort of experience. And then I was offered a place on their coaching program to become certified as a Wild Fit coach. And I wanted to do that. So I jumped right into the coaching program, and 2 weeks into the coaching program, which was a big financial commitment actually, my husband and I decided to end things.
Oh boy.
So I had reached my breaking point and I needed to say something. And now I was more confident. I felt more able to have the conversation. The conversation didn't go the way I thought it was going to go, because I thought I would say, I've been this unhappy and I wanted you to leave for so long. And then he would say, he's sorry and we'll fix things. And we'll change things. But this didn't happen. So I said what I wanted to say and how I'd been feeling all these years. And we were together for about 10 years. So it's a long relationship. And I said what I needed to say. And then he said, I'll move out.
Wow.
If I can't make you happy, the way things are, I can't change, I'll leave. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That was not what I wanted to hear. And it was a shock. And then
I'm sure.
And then in 2 days, he left with all his stuff, pretty much. So I was suddenly alone in a half-empty house by myself, 3 bedrooms. And I had this crisis of thinking, oh my God, the worst thing ever has happened. And I'm going to eat emotionally and I'm going to lose all my progress. And I won't be able to finish the coaching certification. I never have a business. I'll never share this with anyone. I'll go backwards. But, you know, I wasn't the same person.
Right.
The old me would have totally gone back and back.
Yeah, you would have caved. Yeah.
Totally.
Sure.
And I realized that the transformation was real, that it wasn't just that I changed how I ate for a while, or I changed what I did for a while, that I managed my stress differently for a while. I'd done it permanently. I had now established a new identity, which was around this coaching thing that I was learning to do, right? I was now the person who wanted to share this program with people and to help other people have the same transformation I had and to get out of that vicious circle. And that really had become a new identity. So I wasn't that sad girl anymore that I was from the age of 5 to 33, right? I was now on a much different path. And once I realized that, I thought, oh, I can't order takeaway. Oh, I can't do this, that, and the other. I'm going to have to do a fast, clear my mind. So I did that. I decided to do a fast for 3 days, and I cleared my mind, and I packed up a few more things that needed to be packed up that my husband had left behind, the gifts that he'd given me. And I decided to get rid of all of that because I knew he was never coming back. And I decided that I was just going to channel all my energy into my new life, the new life I was building. But it was scary. And that was the moment when I felt like I needed support. So I called my mother, and she said, because I was facing Christmas alone, you see, and Christmas is very important.
Oh, that's tough.
And I thought, I can't do it alone. And I hadn't spoken to my mother in about 2 years. And I phoned her, and she came out with an apology for something that I had been wanting to hear an apology about for many, many years. And she was never willing to give it. And I just said, it's me, my name, and she just came out with it. And I thought, oh my God, this is magical.
It really is. It really, really is. That's the best way to describe that.
Absolutely. So I flew to Germany for 2 months. So I was still home working at this point. Still, my colleagues had no idea I had transformed. No one had seen me still. So I was allowed to fly to Germany, work from home for 2 months. And then I had leave booked, annual leave booked towards the Christmas period anyway. So I was there from the early November to early January. And a lot of healing happened in that time. And that's when my empathic abilities really blossomed up, because I was now connecting with people again, because for the longest time I hadn't been connecting. And so everything was kind of dormant, and I wasn't really that confident with those abilities, not really understanding they were abilities yet either. And then when all of that healing happened in Germany with my mother, and we were going through stuff, and we were talking about things that happened a long, long time ago, but that needed to be processed still. I realized in quite a conscious way that I was steering the conversation carefully, that I was being considerate of her, of me. It wasn't just that typical anxiety, teenage angst blossoming out of me. It was actually a very civilized, calm conversation where I was somehow making sure she was okay, I was okay, we could talk, communication could happen. And I think that's the point when I started to think, okay, this is definitely a skill. This is definitely like more than just, a happenstance. This is definitely something that I'm doing, that I'm talented with, that, that's the kind of words I would have used at that time to describe it. Because I kind of felt like if I weren't tuned into these kind of emotions of others and environments and stuff like that, I think that conversation would have never happened, or would have never been productive.
Right. Yeah. That makes a big difference.
So we did that. And then I cooked an epic Christmas dinner, which was completely compliant with my new lifestyle as well. So everything I decided to change was still changed. I didn't cave and have anything that would normally be part of my lifestyle anymore, which was big. Because normally any occasion like Christmas or Easter, I would cave. I would almost like look forward to having a day off, whatever I was doing, right? And because this is not a diet, it's my new lifestyle, and it suits me. It's part of who I am now. It was easy. I said, I'll cook the dinner, so I wouldn't have to slide back into eating foods that I know make me sluggish and tired and trigger my pain and all of that, my inflammation. And we went shopping together, my mother and I, and we cooked together. And she doesn't cook, right? Because when I was growing up, I was the cook in the house, and then her partner cooks now. So she never really cooks, but when we did it together, she really enjoyed it. And it felt like it was another level of connection and communication.
Sure. Yeah, that's big.
That was very big. That was incredible. And so we had a really brilliant time. And I did have that sort of low moment towards the end of that time, thinking I'm going back to the UK all by myself. There's no husband waiting for me. There's no friends in Cardiff where I'm resident. I don't know what I'm going to do when I go back. I have this coaching course that I just finished the exam for. And now the next step would be to run the pilot class. So I had to find people to do it. And because of my epic Christmas dinner and people realizing that actually made them feel better. So they said they weren't sort of as sluggish as they normally are around Christmas dinner. They were saying because I didn't tell anyone what I was doing, just my mum knew, but I invited lots of people around and I just sort of served the dinner, and no one really missed a thing because we had mince pies and we had everything. We just swapped out some ingredients.
Right.
And that was genius, right? Because it's a minimal change, but it makes lots of difference. And people were saying acid reflux was reduced or not there at all. And I thought, well, this is excellent. So I said, well, I just passed this coaching certification course, and I now have to do a pilot class to be able to get my certificate. Would anyone want to join? And I thought no one was going to go for it. And a lot of them went. So I ended up with a group of 5 people, just like this.
Yeah, that's so great. That's so great. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it was, you could tell they understood what this was about. Like, these weren't people trying to just lose a few pounds or just go on another diet. I think they totally understood the point of the program, and they all had great success.
That's
so
huge.
We had incredible stories, and I'm so pleased to say that my mum especially, she had a massive transformation. Her story very different from mine in some respects, but lots of overlap. But she was a lifelong smoker. She was an emotional eater and all these kind of things. And also she stopped eating emotionally through the program. She stopped smoking, which is something she wanted for a long time, but could never do. And I was able to support her to do this. And then we went and she dropped 2 dress sizes in 90 days.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
That's amazing.
It was amazing. And she's still on it now. She's created her own lifestyle. It's a bit different from what I'm doing for my own lifestyle, but it works for her. And I always like to say that it's about tipping the balance in your favor. So, you know, we always say it's much more important to have all of the good stuff in your daily meal. I don't want to say meal plan, diet. I don't like those words, but you know what I mean? In your daily intake of food, have more of the good food. Don't worry so much about eliminating all the other stuff, because when you're nourished, you generally are less hungry. You generally are making better choices anyway. And this has been proven true time and time again. So by April 2022, I was suddenly a fully certified coach, and I had clients, and I ran my next class in June straight away. I had clients lined up to do it. So
that's
I've been coaching ever since, and I haven't stopped coaching since this happened, and it's been great. And my empathic abilities really do help me, right?
Yeah, they do. They help me immensely in my coaching programs.
Yeah.
And well, in everything I do, really. But yeah, when you tune into what's going on in somebody's life, it's, I mean, you can give them some major ahas that they weren't even aware existed. And it'll shift that, you know. Plus you can help them understand the limiting beliefs that are keeping them stuck, because you can see it, feel it, hear it, know it, where they can't. They just know they're stuck, and you can help them release that. That's incredible. Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. So that tells me that coaching is your calling, and you're doing exactly what you're meant to do at this point in time. So that's really incredible. And it's really interesting how our journeys are similar but so different. Every single person, it's a different path, but we're all called to do what our unique gifts allow us to do. And if we really tune into that, it makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
So for us and others, right?
Yeah. It
Flows.
does feel easy. It feels, it's flow. It feels like I'm not working, you know, I'm just sort of doing what I love to do, and it lights me up. So I can have a terrible day at work, and I finish, and I talk to my clients a lot about my new routines, because a lot of the times when you're breaking a pattern in terms of a habit pattern, you need to fill the void with something new. Because if you just stop doing something and there is a void, your brain, your subconscious, they fill it in with the old pattern. So something that I do with my clients is that we think about how we can establish a new routine that is similar to the old routine. So it's not a total change, because the brain doesn't like that. Right. But it's a way to make a change that is impactful and lasting, because it is a new routine that then becomes autopilot. Right.
And that's the key right there. And I don't know about you, but I've noticed, like, the bigger the change, the smaller the steps have to be to get there. but you do get there. Those small steps add up really quickly,
They really
and
do.
then it's not overwhelming. You still get there pretty quickly. So that's a really big deal. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Wow, that's an incredible journey.
yeah, this is it. And so, the example I always give is about when I used to order that pizza on a Friday night, because I used to finish working at home, and I still work at home on a Friday now because I still have my job. And so I would finish work at 5 p.m. So I used to order the pizza at 4:30. Now at 4:30, I go make a cup of tea. That's my
Good for
new
you.
pattern.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I used to go downstairs, and because I haven't got good reception up here with my phone signal, so I have to go downstairs to get the internet connection with my phone. And so I'm used to that. I'm used to 4:30, go downstairs. So I go downstairs, make a cup of herbal tea. I come back upstairs, I finish work for the half an hour that I have to finish until 5. And then I don't work overtime, which I wouldn't anyway on a Friday. And then I go and I coach. So I make my coaching commitment at 5 or 5:30 or 6. So it's the next thing I have to think about. So it's not as if there is an emptiness. And because I have my classes on Fridays and Mondays, those are the days that I normally coach, it works perfectly because now I finish work, I have that cup of tea in the last half an hour before I finish work. It winds me down. I then get ready for my coaching class. I then coach my clients, hear all the great progress, connect with them, have that great uplifting flow experience. And then I feel so happy and so fulfilled that I can't help but make myself a healthy dinner.
That's perfect.
Yeah. And
Wow.
that work is beautiful.
Yeah.
It feels so natural as well. There's no willpower
Sure.
involved at all.
Yeah, that makes a big difference. That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. So, how can people, well, first of all, do you have any upcoming projects or initiatives that you're excited about?
Yeah.
And
So
yeah, share that with us.
Yeah, so I have a free masterclass coming up on Thursday, the 18th of May at 7 p.m. UK time. It's 2 p.m. New York for anyone who wants to join outside of Europe. And it will be looking at how you can look and feel better fast by making small, manageable, doable changes consistently, and how you can speed up your process by actually slowing down. Right? We think that change happens when you do something drastically. But actually, when you do something gently, the body responds much more quickly to those changes. Yeah.
True. That's so
So
true.
it's all about that. It's all about those sort of natural things that anyone can do. They're very affordable. There's no gimmicks. You don't have to enroll in any program. You could just come to the masterclass and then just implement those measures that we're going to discuss, and you would see results in sort of 2 weeks, 3 weeks onwards. You could see results as soon as that, because your energy will change. Your feeling about yourself, within yourself, can change very easily. Your sleep can change very quickly when you start to nourish yourself properly and hydrate and all those things. And so we'll go through the 7 ways that you can use to look and feel better fast this summer, and ditch dieting forever if you so wish.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I've got a website, which is kitchengowild.com, and it has the masterclass on the front page. It also tells you that my next 90-day Eat Well and Thrive challenge is coming up on the 5th of June is the next start date. And so if you want to make a total transformation happen this summer, you can. You can join my group transformation class, and you can come out a totally different person by the end of August.
That's incredible. Well, thank you so much. And I will put that information in the description below the video. And thank you so much for joining me. And we'll have to do this again. This was really, really fun.
My pleasure, Susan.
Thank you for being my first guest. This was incredible. It's an incredible story.
It was lovely. I really enjoyed sharing it with you.
Thank you so much. Okay. We'll see you again soon. Thank you.